Two.
So for the first one, how does the cohesion style of the group affect the style of leadership? Does the size and level of the group have an impact? So I use Ringleman effect. Individual abilities in a team is different to that of a big group. In a big group, there will be people that give like 20% due to there being others in the group, so they don't feel they have to work as hard. Whereas in an individual game, they've got to give their all because they're working for themselves, and they've got to give everything percent on their own. They haven't got anyone else to support them. If the group is bigger, it will be harder to coach. For instance, with Gareth Bale at Real Madrid, he didn't really get on with the fans. He wasn't really too interested in learning the language, and the fans were. He knew the fans were angry with him about it. They didn't really.
I'm not quite sure where the key or my bag is. If you can find a sports bag where the bibs are, the likelihood is that it.
Have you been there today?
No, but I had on Friday. I know.
So yeah, we Gareth Bale not learning the language, and the fans are frustrated with him. He'd still do multiple interviews where he just wouldn't care, still didn't learn the language. Then he got very heavily into playing golf, which he knew the fans got frustrated with.
Massively.
And it was he when he was playing for Madrid, he wouldn't really put much effort in with the team, but then he'd get sort of slandered by the fans, and then he'd go off with like Wales and go score like a worldie or something, and then come back and he'd rub it in their face. And even his signature when he did that goal swing celebration as well, he was just mocking the fans. He plays for himself. He's better when he has to put the energy into prove something.
So you said that when he played for Wales, the leadership team around the Wales team really helped his performance come, but the instability, that's one of the keywords you can look at, the instability of Real Madrid when he was there had an impact on the way in which he played. Yeah. So if there's lack of stability, negative impact. When he was the Wales team, he had lots of stability, felt welcomed and loved. That's a big factor there. Yeah, good, Karen. Lovely. Good stuff.
For example, such as like Hazard at Madrid, which he hasn't been playing very well. He hasn't really fitted in, gelled in with the team.
Similarities between Bale and Hazard, it's the same team, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a whole big link in terms of the cohesion of the group there. If you've got a team full of superstars, is it always necessarily going to work?
And then you've got Festingers and how do you pronounce that one? I don't pronounce that.
Shakhtar.
Yeah. And Black defined cohesion as the total field of forces which act on members to remain in the group. Cohesion only works when the group has the same goal and end target. Task. Cohesion is when the group work well together and has the same goal. So, for instance, with City at the moment, they're in goals Champions League because they haven't won it yet. See where I was. In the end, they have a shared purpose within like the team or within the players. Having a big group will make the task of cohesion harder, as everyone's not guaranteed to get along due to there being more people there. When paying for a membership, people are more likely to try as they are spending their own money on it. Whereas when they're paying for a team, that doesn't have any cohesion, which would be autocratic. But where there is cohesion, it's more democratic and laissez-faire.
Got you.
So for this, as an example, I used, which is more recent, Sadio Mane and Leroy Sané at Bayern. Mane hasn't really had the best time at Bayern anyway. I mean, he started off looking great, but then it's just kind of gone downhill from there. But with the little like punch-up incident they got into, those two really don't get on within the club at the moment. They've never been to get on. They were throwing like pointing fingers at each other when ultimately they didn't go in with the same goal of just win the game.
Mm-hmm.
They were obviously just looking at their own individual performances.
Yeah.
And it was more or less like they were trying to outshine each other when they both played. I think Sané had a good performance that game. Mane probably not the best, but instead of Mane taking ownership, he probably blamed Sané for not passing him the ball in the one attack.
He's in Liverpool that quite a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, he did it with Salah as well.
So he's quite hot-headed.
Yeah.
We might come back into that when we talk about stress, anxiety, and arousal, because that's a good thing to go back to. So I'll link that for you later. Okay, Karen.
Then for question 2, how does leadership style change when in the different stages of the group development? So you've got Tuckman stages of group development, which are forming, storming, norming, and performing. So for forming, forming is when the team comes together, where players week in and week out play for their club and have been picked out. This is the stage where players don't know if they belong there, and they then start to assess each other and then they kind of make a decision whether they're going to gel into the team or not. So 2 examples I've given for this is you've got Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. Not Forest went for, I think, signing like 21, 22 players in their last transfer window, and although they had all those players, they didn't seem to gel together until quite late in the season, where they've been recently starting to pick up performance a bit.
How do you think Steve Cooper went along and did that? Because that must have been so hard to have that many new. How many said 22 players?
I think it was 22 or 21 new players.
22 new players coming into a squad. Steve Cooper being the Nottingham Forest manager, how do you think he did that? And I mean, this is a free question. You're not going to get judged on your answer unless I agree. That's good for that. How do you think he did it? Because that's admirable, correct?
Yeah.
To get Nottingham Forest have stayed up.
Yeah.
By the looks of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Graham Potter was sacked for the same reason, having 30 odd players at Chelsea, but a lot of them were already there for a long time. At Nottingham Forest having 22 players coming in, it likely already had players there. So the same amount of players being a bloated squad. You've already mentioned size makes it difficult because of the amount of Ringerman effect and social opening that can take place. How do you think Steve Cooper went about doing it?
Well, I think the difference between Potter and Potter's situation is at a Big Six club. He signed a bunch of players which are going to be ultimately the players Notts Forest were signing were like, you're not as well known, but they were more like your high championship level. They belong in the Prem, but they would be at the teams like Notts, Fulham, teams like that, who have just recently come on. Whereas at Chelsea, Potter's brought in these big names such as like Enzo Fernandez, all these big players, and they've had one of their worst seasons to date. Whereas Cooper's kept them up, and he's just about managed to. I think he would have been allowed a lot more time because I think it was expected for Forest to go back down.
Okay.
I think the Premier League did like an AI pick for like where our teams would finish, and I'm pretty sure they were picked to be relegated as well. So considering they
the beginning of the season,
which they started off poorly, so like, obviously bringing in all those players, probably because they're having a poor season, in bringing in those players, they looked at it and thought, okay, even if they don't gel quick enough, we're having a bad season, irrelevant. At least we've got squad depth. Yeah, because that's like Arsenal's problem. No squad depth. They've got a paper-thin squad. But if Arsenal's to go and do the same thing, then you'd be looking at Arteta getting sacked as well. I think he can only get away with it because the level of management and on the level of the team, I think that's what it comes down to.
Cool. If you keep on having players being brought in, what stage of group development are you going to remain? Are you going to be staying at? Forming. Yeah. So every time a new player comes in, forming. Yeah. That's especially if a new manager comes in, like it's been happening at Chelsea. Different managers. What other clubs have like several managers?
Tottenham.
So Tottenham consistently going through with Ryan Mason coming in. No matter how much he tries, he's going to be coming in. Team goes back to forming again. Yeah. So then for how? So obviously the impact on performance. If you're consistently informing, what's going to happen? What's the other end of the spectrum for Tottenham's group development? Forming, and then you've got part. Where do you want to be? Forming, performing. So what's likely to be happening in performing, performance-wise?
Our team will be winning more games and playing a lot better and gelled and a lot of better connections on the pitch.
Yeah, which isn't happening at Chelsea, is it?
No.
Where's it now happening? Funnily enough, Nottingham Forest.
Yeah. Recently, the last 4 or 5 games, definitely.
Yeah, it's just taken that long to get there.
Yeah.
So you can say you mentioned Arsenal. Arsenal got into that performing really early, and therefore started to do a small group, got there quicker. Big group took a long time.
Whereas Arsenal got them injuries and then they've had to bring players in that. They're still in the forming stage, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Carry on.
So then you got storming. Group development, and is often continuous, helps people feel more comfortable to voice their opinion. Group members might attempt to establish power positions. This is where conflict starts as they question authority and establish their and other roles. This is, however, very healthy and normal. I didn't have an example for this one until the other day. I think a decent one will be, which is recent, would be De Bruyne with Guardiola.
Absolutely.
In that game against Madrid, even though they beat them 4-0. You had De Bruyne tell Pep to shut up. Pep was on the sideline, telling him to pass the ball and release it. Whereas De Bruyne obviously had something going on, had other plans, but obviously he looked over at Pep and then he looked like he lost the ball. And I think after that, De Bruyne voiced his concerns with like Pep and stuff like that. But then players like De Bruyne, who when they first joined the club didn't really have a voice, they weren't really someone to have a conversation or get too loud with anyone. Whereas you can see where it's come from. That's where you can see like there's still storming in City's performance as well. Even though they performed well, Pep still wasn't happy, and De Bruyne still wasn't happy, even though they went and won the ball in the Champions League final.
Amazingly right, yeah.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, good. Good analysis. Yeah.
Next, you've got Norming, which is when the group has resolved all/most conflict between the group. They work together towards an end goal. At this point, the team starts to know each other outside the team, and they start to respect each other. They start to seek input and validation from their fellow teammates. They start to learn their roles, which makes less conflict around the team, and they start to figure out who's their friend and who is just like their teammate. And you can use like Forest for this, like from the last couple of 5 games, the players started to gel together and find their own rhythm. Or even like you've got teams like Brighton as well, which have really thrived. They thrived under Potter, and then they dipped a bit.
Yeah.
And then like they've started to rise back up again. They started beating bigger teams and doing well, other than when they lost 5-0 a week.
Newcastle.
It was Newcastle. Yeah, that was just it was a poor performance, which shows like they still have it, but overall their team's come a long way from what they are, because it's against another team you wouldn't expect to be in the top.
You can have a group that is cohesive and working well in that performing stage. Just if they're up against a team like Newcastle just had way more of everything that night in comparison to what Brighton may have had. And there's tactical issues, there's technical things that go on.
You've got Newcastle that are fighting to stay in that. At that point in time, you had Liverpool that was still closing in on them. You had United that were trying to get away from Liverpool. Ultimately, if they lost that game and then Liverpool did go on against Villa, then that could have shifted it. Whereas Brighton are in a position where they've already done well, and for Brighton to be where they are, it's classed as amazing as it is.
Really winning, isn't it?
Yeah, that they've already achieved something that they shouldn't. Well, on paper they shouldn't have achieved. So I think it meant a bit more to Newcastle than it did Brighton. I think that's what it come down to on the day.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And then you've got performing, which is when the group's productivity and efficiency is high. The team starts to feel more comfortable with like teammates on and outside of work, or outside the pitch. They spend most of their time together. At this stage, the leader doesn't intervene. They help and guild. Due to them not knowing their roles, they work autonomously, I think autonomously, that's it. On task most of the time. If conflict occurs, it is constructive criticism, which really, it's from like personal, like the players like personal friends, stuff like that. And it's not really having to cover them anymore. I think a good example for this one would be in like the 2019 season for Liverpool, when you had Robertson. It's like you've got Robertson and Van Dijk. You've also got Robertson and Trent. Trent and Robertson spend a lot of time not out and about. Like they've done quite a few like videos together online, like showing that like for the Liverpool team. But they were just driving around in the car answering questions, and you've got like when they do their challenges for like Sky Sports or something like that. Then you've got Robertson, who's forever tweeting about Van Dijk, making jokes. So like you can tell that those players are really well gelled. So you've got Konate, which he's tweeted out multiple times about how he looks up to Van Dijk as a role model, and how like Van Dijk tweets out that how he looks at Konate as well. So you can tell the team's quite well gelled together. And like that 2019 season was probably the most well gelled Liverpool team that you could have seen.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Then for question 3, which is how does a successful leader develop the cohesion in a group / team? So I went with the Villa coaches taking like the phones of players. I think that's a ideal thing for a leader to go and do if you need your players to gel together, because when you're top footballers and stuff like that, or even like people in everyday life, they're always on the phone, and then you get antisocial, and that's when the team don't talk. Whereas if you take the phones away from them, they're forced to have that conversation. Then they are forced into a situation where they've got to get past that forming stage. They've got to figure out who's their mates and who are just their teammates. And it helps boost the whole process along just a little bit quicker.
I agree.
And then for question 4, how does a leader prevent the Ringleman effect and social loathing? What technique might they use? Social loathing is when you do what the players are doing. So if there is a big group that have all good motivation, they would have a. So if you're with a group that has like good motivation, then you're more likely to be more motivated yourself. I think it's good.
Yeah, in a way, social loathing is when you have individuals in a group setting not performing to the level. It's almost like through choice. They're not putting the effort in.
Yeah, they wouldn't have any group in a group that they don't have any motivation. That like they just wouldn't be motivated as others. I think you got a couple of examples. I'm trying to think of one that really sticks out to more recently or in the past. To be honest, you could go with someone like Nunes as well, like struggling to learn the language and stuff like that. He's surrounded by confident players, and you can tell in himself at times that he's not the most confident, and that is due to him still being in a foreign country. And he's also expected to turn up to Liverpool and do these big things, especially with the price tag that's been put on him. It's what you expect, but he hasn't really had the time to gel in either and not figure out. But he is surrounded by high motivated players, which probably makes him feel a little bit less motivated when he's not playing at their standards.
It's also easy for him to hide behind them, isn't it?
Yeah. So like, overall, the Ringleman effect is when there are more people in the group. People won't try as hard. They have people that hide behind other people. So like different things you could do, be like put them in groups depending on the skill level. Give them different tasks that they have to complete. So like test the player so you can see where they fit in, which would also help putting them in groups depending on the skill. And even something as simple as just sitting down and just having like a talk and like about what's expected from the player and how they're feeling and how they're going to approach it. And then you got question 5, which personality theories are linked to effective leadership? So situational is when people will change their personality when coming into situations. So someone could be very quiet, but they could be the best player and have one of the biggest personalities. And then they could become anxious and scared to be a leader and take control. You've got trait states that personality is developed as a child, and it doesn't change at all. This means if they wasn't born natural leaders, they wouldn't be a good leader, as they can't be taught out. So a good example for a trait leader, I think, would be got Roy Keane, which I think there is like a little documentary out as well of Roy Keane's life, and he's always been quite hot-headed, and he's always been like kicking off at his players, like
assertive, quite.
Yeah, he's always took charge, and that's always what's made him a good player. Because on the pitch, he wasn't the most technical player; it was just the passion he played with and how he spoke to his. He's always straight to the point, which helped United in that point in time as well. When you've got interactional, is when your personality can change, but only when something extreme happens. So you can have the most extroverted person, but they might not want to lead and back away. However, you can have like most introverted person, and if they become if they want to become a leader, they will still keep some of their traits.
It's a bit like how you mentioned Kevin De Bruyne earlier on. Like, quite introverted, very much a case of quite quiet, but then pushed to his limits, came out with some real strong leadership traits.
Another example for this as well would be, I think I've used it before with that John Terry, with that Villa player. He was a young lad in training. He used to excel in training. Then he had some family issues going on in the background. He changed. He was playing sloppy, and then Terry immediately jumps at kick him off the team. He can't be bothered. Instead of sitting down and having a conversation with him, so like things like that, something like can happen in a player can just change like that. And you've got introvert. An introvert he's more likely want to be alone. They won't feel comfortable to lead as they aren't as confident to lead. So like people like Kevin De Bruyne, it takes a lot for De Bruyne to say what he wants to say, whereas compared to a lot of other players where you've got people like Jordan Henderson, Roy Keane, they're confident in what they say. But yeah, people like De Bruyne, it takes a lot of anger and a lot of build up and a lot of courage to say what they want to say. So they won't be left alone.
So therefore, not so confident to be a leader, but will become a leader. So that's your introduction off there in a nutshell. Okay, so does a good leader need to have a high level of confidence?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through confidence, self-concept, and self-esteem.
Yeah, so for number 6, how does confidence, self-esteem affect leadership? Confidence, if they have a high level of confidence, they will believe in themselves, and they'll believe in what they say is good. They will definitely follow through with what they're putting out there. They will always do and believe that what they say and what they do is for the best for themselves and for the team. But if you have a low level of confidence, it wouldn't make you as good as a leader, as that would just be someone who second guesses himself, isn't as confident in their choices, and won't always follow through with what they say. For self-concept, it is if they have if you have a high level of self-concept, they will believe in themselves, but also they'll also have a backup plan and can say when their plan hasn't gone very well. If self-concept is low, they wouldn't be a good leader due to them not believing in themselves and wouldn't go through with their own ideas. Yeah. So it kind of comes into like having low confidence. You wouldn't really always go through what you say. It's low self-concept and self-confidence. Yeah.
So self-concept is that to be a successful leader, you've got to have faith in the fact to go and do is actually going to be worthwhile. Yeah. But sometimes that goes wrong. I gave earlier on to somebody that when Thursday's activity, let's try and get it's done in a day and get assessed straight away. I believe that plan was a good plan. What did I not put into the situation? What did I not think of? I thought my plan was a winner. What did I not factor into my plan?
Backup plan. So
backup plan was to just go make it a day later.
I'm not sure.
You guys. I thought you guys would be able to go and do it. I didn't factor in you guys as how you felt about it. Yeah, because I thought it was like, oh, great plan. Let's go ahead and do it. Had confidence in my plan. The outcome was wishy-washy because I didn't factor in how much of an effort it was going to put onto you guys. Yeah. So sometimes for better, for worse. Yeah.
And self-esteem. If your self-esteem is low, then you more than likely won't believe in yourself and you wouldn't really have any self-confidence. They think they are good enough to be able to lead. If their self-esteem, so if it was low, they wouldn't believe in themselves and wouldn't have no self-confidence. But they also think that they wouldn't be good enough to lead. If the self-esteem was high, they would make a good leader, as they wouldn't be second-guessing themselves. They would know exactly what they want to do, and they wouldn't feel out of place saying it or doing it.
Yeah.
And then
does Frank Lampard have high self-esteem, do you reckon?
I think he did when he first saw it. I think even he knows he's just like a guinea pig for the club. Because I've said it from the start, he's gone back to Chelsea, and Chelsea have just picked out someone who's gullible and desperate enough to just take the job, even though they've openly said we're going to bin you off. And that's what's going to happen. So he's going to play. He could have done well. He could have done really well. He could have gone and smashed City like 6-7-0, and it's still sack him off at the end of the season because they don't want him there. Then for number 7, what are the effects and types of motivation? For example, like extrinsic, intrinsic affect leadership. Intrinsic motivation is when you find motivation from yourself. They do the activity for pleasure and satisfaction. When being intrinsic, they do the sport for joy and happiness. So they don't do it for the money and the attention. They more than likely do the sport like for fun and like just for himself. A good example would be players like Saka, like young players that are at clubs that like the Royal clubs. So Saka would be a good example of being intrinsic. As he's always been humble, and when he makes his mistakes, he's always been open about him. Like the penalty he missed, he came out and he apologised, And that's like the penalty for Arsenal that he misses, whereas the one for England, he knows when he's let people down, he always comes out about it, but he's always bounced back and he'll always give 100% because he does it for the club, he does it for himself.
What sort of
not the
impact does
others.
that have in terms of? Are you saying that Saka is like the leader in that aspect then? As a player,
In terms of motivation, I think he's one of the players in that Arsenal side that definitely leads with motivation. Like, I think there are quite a few players that feed off him. Like generally in the midfield, it's like when you see Saka can have a dip in performance, but he's given enough motivation. I can just see like Odegaard, then thrive. They kind of take in turns, and there's games when they're both on top form, and that's when Arsenal are picking teams apart. Same as Martinelli when he's fit and playing. Like against Liverpool, he caused nothing but problems, and in the first half they were really highly motivated. So Xhaka kind of ruined it for him, and then that's when it went down a little bit. But you still saw Saka that was giving it everything. And he's coming up against big opponents, and he was still going straight through him. So giving it everything he's got. He's always willing to like learn new things. He's open to the criticism side of things as well, which is something that most footballers do struggle with, and most people in sport struggle with because they see himself as the best of the best. If he was to be identified as something, he'd be more identified as like a grade A student. He's what you want in a kid.
Really is, isn't he?
Yeah,
A star A level, shouldn't he?
Yeah. This identifies his intrinsic motivation as a long-term motivator of elite. And so and then you got extrinsic. Extrinsic motivation means you take part in anything for money and attention. The rewards that can be given can be tangible or non-tangible. When extrinsically motivated, people get their motivation from other people. For example, you've got Conor McGregor, even footballers like Jack Grealish. Conor McGregor is very extrinsic, as he does the sport for the money and for the hype from other people. He very much thrives off getting attention and being the centre of attention and having that money around him as well.
If I was not wrong, if I critique it, Conor McGregor surely had showed intrinsic motivation to be where he got
at the beginning of his career. Yes.
Is he fighting anymore, Conor McGregor? Is he a different version of leadership to what he was when he was fighting?
See, he wants to fight again. He still is planning to fight, and he's coming against Michael Chandler. Again, the fights he does now, even the Poirier fight, the money was through the roof. Whereas a young Conor McGregor was more interested. He was. Although he did a lot of the trash talk, he was always humble within himself. But he was there for his legacy. Whereas now, as long as he has the money, that's always his go-to now. As long as he's getting money and he's getting the attention, because he's on social media, he's made himself look a bit muggy recently because he's going out for the attention. Because that's what he's interested in. As long as he's the centre of attention, he's getting the most money.
Will that impact the way in which people perceive his leadership? Because he's a leader of the UFC, isn't he? He's a leader of fighters. He's a leader of that.
He's on the Ultimate Fighter series at the moment with Michael Chandler. Again, no matter what, because of how he was, people still want him to want to be coached by him over Chandler or anyone else. Because although he's not fighting as well now, he's still got the knowledge that he can still pass on. And no matter what, I think age has come into it, breaking his ankle, taking that time off. He's gotten stiffer. Whereas his fighting style is still. If you're young and you carry on with that and carry on through your whole career, don't take the break. It's more not you. So I don't think it's majorly affected his leadership. I think it's affected his performances when he's fighting, though, like majorly, since he's kind of made himself look a bit muggish, and he's got this new hunger for just the money and the attention. He's not fighting nowhere near as well. I think the last two fights he really went into was when he fought Mayweather and Khabib. And I think after Khabib, I think just Poirier, he just wasn't there to win it. Second, though, when they had that third fight, I think he probably would have won it, but I think that was the fight that made him realise, okay, I need to win, otherwise I'm not going to be. No one's going to be interested.
Have that legacy and therefore be as an effective leader.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, Connor. Finally, stress, anxiety, and arousal.
So for stress, anxiety, and arousal. For stress, you'd worry about it could be things like mental struggle. This can be about a lot of things. If someone is stressed, their leadership style can change. If someone was autocratic, their stress could lead them to be laissez-faire, or vice versa. This is because the stress could mess with them and make them completely change the way they think, the way they take control, or the way they act, or just generally the way they feel, and this can lead to them losing all authority. For anxiety, the feeling of being anxious, the unknown, and being stressed. This is the same as stress. Anxiety can completely change people's views on anything. They could possibly lose all sense of authority. They can then begin to second guess themselves, or could be that they're worried to take control of the situation, give their opinions, and express themselves. And for arousal, I've got how much they're like into the thing that's in front of them, so how much they want what's being laid out for them. For them, and the energy level they have towards it. If they have no arousal, they could be laissez-faire. They don't have the energy to do anything, so they would leave all the decisions to the team. So if they're in a team sport, they wouldn't give as much energy, and if they're an individual sport and they acted that way, then they're more or less leaving themselves with no chance of winning. If they are too aroused, they could lead to making stupid decisions. They could
a bit like how Arteta was very recruit.
Even though Arteta, you got Roy Keane as well on Haaland, Haaland's dad, when he just got angry and completely wiped him out, and
over aroused, showed poor leadership, didn't he?
Got himself a red card and set Haaland's dad down on the career of his career ending. That was like the kind of the beginning of the end for him. If they're too aroused, it would more likely lead to them taking control of the situation if they're too aroused, but they could lead to them taking too much control and then leading to a downfall. If they're aroused at an optimal level, they would have they'd go in with the best mindset. They'll take control appropriately over themselves as well as others, and it be in the mindset of what's best for the team. So again, by people like Saka, who goes into his games quite level-headed, and that's why, although he is younger than most of his teammates, they still look at him, and listen to him as well. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Lucky. That's that fun. You always seem to do when we come to a spoken word assessment. Always the person that speaks the longest. Do the